leaders, they create culture. Culture then drives behaviours.
Sure.
He's then a shit leader and a shit manager because he's never done it. One meeting after the next, after the next, after the next. It's almost a badge of honour. And you've lost your best salesperson. You know, Gareth is an astonishingly great leader.
Okay, so second time of asking. Welcome to the Manchester SEO podcast. Today we've got Pete Ackerley with us from the ECB and has a wide range of experience around development sport with the FA and ECB and the English American Football Association and lots more. And so welcome.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So what are you up to at the moment?
What am I up to at the moment? We're enjoying the sunshine,
yes.
And desperately looking forward to those cakes and very shortly. But currently, an independent non-exec director of the England and Wales Cricket Board.
Okay.
I've been there coming up to 2 years now.
Right.
It's been a transformational time in the game. I came into the England and Wales Cricket Board following a fairly long executive career in sport, which we can probably talk a little bit about. Came in at a time when the game was going through some real challenges from the Independent Commission for Equality in Cricket, ICEC report, and talking about racism in the game and access to the game from all sorts of different parts of the game. So, you know, a more reflective. That was very much about race, but very much also about women's part of the game and how do we transform the women's game. So, hugely difficult time to come into the game, but a massively exciting time to come into the game with the transformation of what I would say global sport. Sport globally and cricket specifically is going through this massive global transformation.
Yeah.
And being a part of that, looking at how we as English cricket impact on the global stage, but also protect and serve the game here in England, which has been around. I was at the first game of the County Championship last week at Lords. 135 years since the first County Championship game, and we're committed to protecting that. Plus, one of the big things that I do is I sit up onto the Recreational Game Committee, which is the sort of tier down from the board. It reports into the board, which is the whole of the recreational game. Okay. Where, as I say, every England cricketer, man or woman, that's where they start their game. So every local club is the game. That's where all our volunteers are. It's where they commit. Last weekend was the Toyota Get Set weekend, where everybody sort of paints the side screens, gets everything ready, clears the dressing rooms out. And that's where the game is really played, as I say it. And that's where all the players come from. And that's our commitment to protect that, grow that, and then start to look at how do we make now cricket the nation's most inclusive team sport? That's our sort of like North Star. Plus, how do we unite and inspire the game to have more participation, get more people involved in the game, play in the game for longer? You know, I sort of have a mantra of sort of like, how do we get more people playing more cricket more often? But understanding that the world's a different place than it was when I started playing cricket. A million years ago. In now, it used to be then when I played, you put your cricket in the diary and you sorted your world around it, whereas now you see where you might be able to fit a game of cricket into your busy life. So it's starting to just look at the game as a business and the business of cricket. So that's my sort of major part, but also now I'm doing a huge amount of coaching, mentoring, working with people in sport who are in that sort of middle manager level, wanting to progress into different levels, having had a fairly extensive executive career at Lancashire Cricket, ECB at Lords, the Football Association as part of their senior exec team for a number of years, and helped establish British American football with the growth of the game here, working alongside the NFL and getting the sport established and funded. And now I just do a little bit of consultancy, but mainly massively interested in people development and developing people, using, if you like, the metaphors or the business of sport into business. And having had a 15-year banking career before sport, whilst I played cricket in leagues and did some coaching, I suddenly found that was my real, which is where we first met again about a million years ago, or it seems that way. I think 1995 when
95,
I coached a raw youth in a sports hall in Warrington. But it's that the principles are still the same.
Yeah.
The principles are still the same about having what I call a real clarity of purpose. Of why do I get up in the morning?
Yeah.
Banking wasn't why I got up every morning. There was a nice salary. It was there every month. And there's a beautiful long-term career with a pension at the end. I did 15 years and I had one of those Groundhog Day moments of, I've got to do this for another 30 years. And that really wasn't part of the plan. And I've since thoroughly enjoyed a career in executive in sport and the development of sport. And that has changed massively over the last 30 years.
So, taking you back to that sports hall, well, I've obviously quoted in the past that you're my favourite coach for those few weeks. And the reason was that coaching was a little bit stale, I felt. And I played the game in a different way and tried to, whether it was young bravado or anything, but I like to score boundaries and win games. And Cheshire at the time was all about good forward defensive and leaving half volleys outside off stump, and it infuriated me. And then you came along and you were putting tape on one side of tennis balls and wanging it in at us, and we were dodging bounces, and it brought joy to those sessions that we didn't have normally. And so you mentioned banking before that, so I'm interested, which I didn't know. I'm interested in what made you go into banking, and then what was it that kind of, how did the transition go?
Well, I was very lucky. My background. I'm very proud of my background from a council estate in Salford, in Cadishead, and passed an 11+, went to a grammar school. Was I an academic? I don't know if I was an academic, but I didn't particularly enjoy schoolwork. I enjoyed being on a sports field. I wasn't overly keen on Pythagoras and trigonometry, or I loved English literature and geography and history, but everything else was perhaps not. But the first opportunities, people were talking about A-levels and university. When you're from a council estate in Salford, that language isn't, and I just loved playing sport. And plus, in the house at the time, my dad wasn't working, so getting a job was quite important. And I got a job in a bank at 16, and well, if I'm here, I might as well, like everything else. My philosophy is, well, if I'm here, I might as well try and enjoy it and do well out of it. And very, very luckily, although there's no such thing as luck, that's when preparation meets opportunity. So never say you're lucky. You've either done the preparation and you've created the opportunities. So I got through banking, did my banking exams, did a lot of studying. So you work all day, study all night. It's quite a commitment. And you got your rewards, like everything. You put the hard work in and you get your rewards. And got into management in banking. And this was way back in the sort of 70s, late 70s, 80s. Banking was a very different world then. And did quite well, and had a year working out in Spain in Andalusia, in Cordoba, which I went back to last year for the first time in 30 odd years. But it was one of those great career, learnt a lot about management, marketing, business development, managing people, leadership. Quite often in banking, you learn how not to be a leader because you saw the really bad examples of it. But when you saw a good example, and I was really lucky, again, preparation met opportunity, and I did an MBA while I was in the bank.
Wow.
And then at 30 years old, would I have been? Just over 30. I've got to do this for 30 more years. It was a Groundhog Day. I just can't do that for 30 years. And I was seeing the development of sport that's what I really wanted to do. And at the time, there was an ability to do some coaching in sport. And I felt that's where I was best suited. And I wanted to develop people. I mean, you just said, but I want to develop people to be the best they can be. I don't think coaching is trying to put something into you. It's like working out, what can I get out of you? What are you really good at? Or how do I find it? And let you express it and create the environment around you to do that. And that's what my coaching philosophy probably still is. I always say that, and people who follow me on LinkedIn will have this hashtag making a difference or make a difference. That's what we're about. If every day we all wake up and make a difference, then the world's a better place.
Yeah.
And if you're not making a difference, well, stop and do something that is making a difference. And I just created that philosophy, and it became successful. I ended up doing some coaching, then ended up at Lancashire Cricket, and 1999 the World Cup was here, and got asked to fulfil a role at Lords at the England World Cricket Board, and that was my first exec role. And during the summer of 2005 got the head of game development role at ECB. That summer was quite a summer. On and off the field. Very fortunately, I was on the second bus that went through London.
Right. Okay.
And the stories of the night before and the day and the after, they will remain. I will write a book one day. But that was a great time to be in cricket. And then in 2009, I got asked and invited to go to the Football Association at the new Wembley, as it was then, and then ultimately St George's Park. And enjoyed developing the game there, and then into British American football, and ultimately now sort of taking some step away from the executive side of the world and doing the non-exec stuff. And as Richard Thompson, the chair of ECB, told me, I didn't realise this, but I'm the first executive of ECB to now be a non-exec who sits on the board.
Wow.
So I take that as a lad from a council estate in Salford.
See, so in 2005, won the Ashes, huge breakthrough, not only for the England team, but for cricket as a whole, because of the coverage and the interest and those involved. And then I suppose there might be a similar stage now where there's an opportunity to get more investment into cricket, and that came through Sky and Sky TV and everything. And I'm sure there was a pros and cons thing about that, because it wouldn't be viewed by as many people, and like it was on Channel 4 and things like that. Do you think ultimately that was the...
I think that it is different. It is a balance. It is a different balance between, if you like, taking a sport behind a paywall as opposed to having it on free to air. Yeah. But in terms of where we are now, we are in a different world of digital and pay per view. It's not. I can remember watching cricket on the BBC, 11:25, 5 minutes just before the first ball. Yeah, you played the the cricket theme, and it was on all day, and it actually used to get taken off because there was a race from, Sandown Park came on, or the news, and anything. So it's a different world, and what we have to continue to do and continue to do now is, well, what is the next big thing? How do we look ahead? And that's one of my roles as a board, non-exec board, is to support the executive massively, but to challenge them to say, well, what's the future looking like? Where do we go next? And looking for the opportunities, whether that be in the recreational game. For instance, now the massive growth in cricket will come from women's and girls cricket. Now all of that has taken place behind a paywall. Yet girls can identify every one of the, whether it be Sophie Eccleston, whether it be Nat Sciver-Bunt, they know who these cricketers are. Winning trophies helps, winning World Cups, and that's winning Ashes series is always a big help. So you want to be on the front pages. I remember last summer, Anderson Broad, they were on the front page of every newspaper, and that's where you want to be as a sport. But equally, you're about entertainment, and the England team under Baz and Ben certainly entertain.
They do.
As a board director, and we probably want games to be a bit longer at times to make sure that we can have the fans in for 5 days. However, it's a much bigger spectacle. The game is changing. I talked before about the global transformation of sport. And I guess that's said in business now. We all realise, and events of the last few days in the other side of the Atlantic, realise that we are all now in a global market, whether it be sport, whether it be business. Things that happen in other markets have a big impact on our businesses, and we're no different in sport. So that bit about behind the paywall, it was of its time. Now we move on, and they'll be looking at different. I look now at Gen Z, and they look at everything on their phone.
Yeah.
They don't. They do bite-sized chunks of.
You can get selected for England if you've got some wickets on TikTok or something, can't you?
Yeah. So those things that's where it's different. And my grandchildren and my stepson are no different. They consume their media very differently than perhaps you and I do, or even an older generation does. And the balance for us as a board, and the balance for the business of cricket is understanding those. Yeah. What's the current market? What are the new markets? How do we combine the two? My accountant tells me really he's one of those dyed-in-the-wool, huge, committed to Lancashire cricket and a great stalwart of the game.
Yeah.
I don't know, Paul's probably mid-70s, and this 100, I don't like it. I don't want to watch it. And I said, with the greatest respect, it's not for you, and we don't need you there. We want your grandchildren there. Oh, they love it. Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
They do love it, and having a women's game and a men's game on the same ground on the same day, play, and one team, one club, two teams. That's what this is about now. It's a very different mindset.
I was with your accountant at the start, and then I watched one. I thought, this makes sense. This actually makes sense. Yeah. Why would you have 6 balls in there?
Well, but there is all of those things, and will it stay that way? That will be about supply, demand, watching audiences and what the audiences want. Yeah. But I remember being at ECB when we decided we were going to introduce 2020 cricket.
Yeah.
The game was up in arms. You can't do this. We play county cricket. And, as everybody always says to me, that everybody's now, T20, that's the biggest thing, that's our best game. Well, when it was voted for at the time by the counties, it wasn't unanimous. Many counties didn't want 2020 cricket coming into the calendar.
I found it amazing at the time because I'd grown up playing 20 over junior cricket.
That's all you ever played, probably.
Yeah. No, it's just the
most natural thing in the world, right?
Yeah. What's the problem?
And I think that's where you start to become now. The game has changed, and people will argue. I will defend that the right Test match cricket is the ultimate test, and we need to find space in the calendar for Test matches. It is the ultimate test of a cricketer, but we've got to balance that with the audience requirements of 2020 and or the 100 of short forms. So we've got to balance that, and we've got to balance the audiences of we want a bigger audience, so we want. Men, women, boys, girls. We've got to balance that completely in how we deliver our product, if you like, to new audiences.
Yeah. It's a tough game to play if you're a professional, isn't it? Because although you love the game, you play a lot and you're travelling all the time.
Yeah, that is one of my board responsibilities is this the duty of care of our players. I'm starting to be really cognizant of. I don't think we actually play too much cricket. It's just how we schedule the cricket to make sure that there's rest days and you can recover and then you can play at your optimal performance. And that's one of the things that I always reflect on in sport, that really high quality sport, elite sport is all about planning. It's about the preparation and the warm up. It's then about that peak performance of, It's then about the warm down or the cool down and reflect on, review what you've done. And then proper, what I would call good recovery time before you do it all again. And cricket, does it do all of those things? Does sport do it? But I think in the main, most sports go through that. But I would argue, into business, people don't do that. It's meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to, they're always on, chase the deal, big performance, another pitch, another. If businesses out there started to coach their teams and their staff a little bit more like sports teams. Well, how do you really prepare for this meeting, and how do you really get it right? And then how do you perform in that meeting? And how do you reflect afterwards? Or what I see in some of my clients all the time is, look at my diary. Get one meeting after the next, after the next, after the next. And it's almost a badge of honour. And what I think we'll find in sport now is It started in tennis. It's starting to happen in cricket. We're starting to look now at and with no doubt happening in football. You cannot be an elite performer. Rugby is probably another great example. You cannot be an elite performer 12 months of the year, every day. Because you can't deliver. You're not. Where's your preparation and practice time, and where's your recovery time? And we have to balance that with the demands of the commercial providers. I have a saying. Friends of mine always, they say, what's like working in sport? They work in business. What's sport about? And sport is just logos and egos. Right. That's how I view it. And you can get through it by working out that, yes, it is about the logo and the commerciality. It is about, in sport, huge egos involved in it, and working out those egos and how to work that through. And it's always something I keep at the back of my mind all the time. If you understand that, you can work in it, and you can get around it. But you have to understand that there are huge logos and huge egos in sport. And there probably is in business as well, I suspect. But it's just understanding that and coaching your teams and coaching yourself and developing yourself to be able to work in those environments. And I think that's what I sort of take from my sporting analogies and sporting life. And try and desperately, have I done it well? No, of course I've been in that. Working 16 days on the straight, traveling here, there and everywhere, and getting up early, getting to bed late, into the next meeting. And I've done it, of course we've all done it. Doesn't make it right.
No.
And if you want to be a peak performer, that's still sport. You've got to reflect on that.
To make choices over priorities and balancing lots of different things.
And I think that is part of, that's what these good businesses do. That's what high performers do. They make choices. They really do prioritize what is the right thing to do. And you get the right priorities. It's get it in the right order. And then it's really understanding what those priorities are. A lot of it's about understanding yourself first and understanding who you are. Because I was saying, sort of, if you know who you are and you know your why and you know your purpose, you start making decisions based on whether it be a purpose and your values set, not what's the next big thing that I'm chasing. Because you make your decision on, well, is that a priority? Does that suit and serve and align to my personal value set, my personal beliefs? And some points, I've had it in sport and I will have it again. You make a choice on, it's not in my value set and I feel uncomfortable about that. So that'll influence my decision. So I think there has to be more based in that.
Was there anything, do you think back to people that influenced you when you were younger? Well, I did a course at Manchester Uni as managers to leaders, and it was with the business school, and the first thing we did was look at all the what we classed as leadership qualities and skills, and then think back to parents or teachers or whatever. What did we feel our strengths, and where did we get them from? Who did we see that in that made us think?
I think that there is, and I'm just, as you were asking that question, my mind started to tick away. And my first ever bank manager, without me realising it, was enormous influence. Probably didn't really have a father figure around me in those formative years, because my father was really quite ill, although still a massive influence on putting a bat in my hand at 18 months old. So I can't thank him enough for that. But that in business, going into a bank and an alien environment, to have this, I thought this really old guy of huge wisdom, and he was probably 40 years old, but as a 16-year-old, he massively influenced my thinking, my direction, without telling me how to do things, but would challenge me. But he was a massive sports fan, and I think he saw that, that spark of that's how I used to be. And he invested in me, and probably without in realising that he probably coached and mentored me throughout my early part of my banking career. Caught some of my value sets from him. You work into sport, and there's always people around you in sport. Baroness Sue Campbell. We've not always agreed on everything, and we've had some one or two spectacular fallouts professionally, but she is just an enormous influence in sport and has transformed sport in this country. Whether for a time at UK Sport, a time at the FA and women's football, a time at the Youth Sport Trust and setting up school sports. She has just had an enormous impact on huge numbers of people, including myself, as someone with a vision and a clarity of vision and an absolute understanding of purpose of where you want to go in a business. And that was massively influenced. Always other people around within cricket has been a huge number of influences. And as I say, I was very lucky to do a lot of management to leaders, like those leadership development. Alan Davis, he was a coach of the Welsh rugby team,
right?
But was then a coach in business.
Sure.
He's had a massive influence on my thinking and development of my own philosophy of. He didn't tell me what it was, but he said you've got to have one, and you've got to create one, and you've got to, And I always quote it and everything. I know it is to make a difference, but I do it by creating opportunities. It's about that. I call it continuous improvement. How do you develop all the time by doing 1,000 things 1% better, not one thing 1,000% better? And then how do you influence others, and how do you collaborate, and how do you work collegiately? Because the one thing that I've always taken on board, and still don't know where I got it from, it's a Lord Harris quote from cricket, but he said, "We are all merely trustees of this game, and we are honour bound to pass it on in a better condition than we found it." Probably the late Victorian era. It's as true today as it was then.
Sure.
And we are all, whatever our business is and whatever we just pass it on in a better condition. And that's the challenge. Are you passing on in a better condition? And that should be your test all the time of, what do you do when no one's watching? That's I always think I look at leaders in sport, and we always talk about leadership, and Gareth Southgate, time at the FA, and you've seen him recently in his Dimbleby lecture. Gareth is an astonishingly great leader. He missed a penalty in the. No, he's a great leader. He's a great leader of young men.
Right.
And he comes from that sense of belonging, clear purpose, clarity of vision, and investing in those young people.
Sure.
And I think that I always ask people about, what's leadership? It's all this. There's probably 1,000 books on Amazon today about, this is how you become a leader. And it's really simple. There's two things. It's not about you. It's about developing others. It's about investing in others.
Yeah.
It's about planting trees that you'll never see.
Sure.
But actually, it's all about you. That's the second part. It's all about you, because it's how you behave, what you say, what you do, and probably more importantly, how do you make people feel? And I think that is really important. I think if you ask any of those young footballers in those squads, he makes them feel very, very special. Yeah. And that's why he's a great leader. And will become, in my view, he'll become an even bigger leader outside football now, in my view.
Okay. Interesting, because it's not you probably don't get that idea from the media as they are. Yeah.
But that's authentic leadership, isn't there? There's you look at the leadership books, and there's lots of different ways of looking at it, but you sort of look at level 5 leaders in good to great. Level 5 leaders, the real leaders who develop, and this was academically researched.
Sure.
The best company performers, these were the leaders who probably didn't know quite who they were. They were behind the scenes. They went about it quietly and modestly, but they invested in their people. They developed their people. They collaborated, and their share prices over 25 years can outperform the market by huge amounts.
Sure.
Whereas your level 3 and 4 leaders here, they're all over social media. They shout in. We've heard one in the last, without it becoming political, we've heard one in the last, few days. It's all about him. It's not about actually the global market. It's not about leading America. It's not about leading the globe. It's all about him.
Yeah.
That's not a leader. That's just a big mouth. What we're about is to, people who develop people, people who invest in people. They're real leaders.
We've spoken a lot in the last year or so on these episodes where sales is quite a good job and industry to show it as the what makes a good salesperson doesn't make a good sales manager usually, because the skill sets are very different.
Yeah,
and you can get that with sport as well. What makes the best player isn't always the best captain or the best manager.
I think that is so right. I mean, even my short time in banking, that, and what tended to happen, there were people who were really natural salesmen and were in the bank selling, really good at sales, whether it be pensions, insurance, and they were hugely good at it, and their numbers were better than everybody else.
Yeah.
He's promoted. He's sales manager now, without any development of leadership or understanding. So what that does is then a shit leader and a shit manager because he's never done it, and you've lost your best salesperson.
Yeah.
So there's an impact doubly of what that's not right.
Sure.
But you look at great sports coaches. Yeah, were they 150 caps for their country? There are exceptions, of course.
Yeah.
Was Wenger the best footballer in the world? Was Alex Ferguson the best footballer in the world? These people were great leaders.
Yeah.
Great people managers. And, whether you go back to Shankly's time, and these were, and then you look at the American sports system, you look at the best head coaches of football teams and baseball teams and basketball teams.
Yeah.
They were incredible leaders of people.
Yeah.
Not, well, I'm a great player, therefore this is how you do it.
Yeah.
That's not leadership. As I say, leadership it's not about you, and it's all about you.
I was going to make an inappropriate joke about marriage then.
Well, there's the team game, right?
Yeah.
Partnership. It's all about partnerships. What people are good at. How do you create that balance of skill sets, and how does it work, and how does it work together?
Yeah.
It's opposite attract. I don't think that might be one good thing, but it's about blending the skill sets of two people in a partnership to make it work. But understanding the purpose and vision of that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
That's where I'm trying to get to. That's what we are doing. Whatever that is, and that it'll be different for everybody. It'll be different for every business. Yeah. But if you start from who you are, and then you create that long-term vision of where you're trying to get to, the journey then is just getting there. Sure. But the straighter the line between the strategy for what you want to do to the outcome you want to get to, you just keep that as a straight a line as possible. Of course, there'll be kinks in the road and there'll be things that will happen, but that's about being agile enough. Yeah. And people always talk about the passionate people in sport, and they talk about how passionate they are. They weren't born passionate. No. They just got really focused on doing some singularly things really well. Yeah. And they do them over and over and over again, and they become hugely gifted. That's it. And that becomes why they're passionate.
So you mentioned Gareth Southgate. You must have met some other very gifted leaders in the sporting world over the time.
Yeah, a lot of it, and all in different leaders, great leaders in different ways. Michael Vaughan was a great leader of the team at that time. Great leader, but great strategist. Got the best out of his players at that time. I'm a bit of a reader, and been lucky enough to meet Mike Brearley on a couple of occasions in my time in sport. And he was one of England's great captains. Was he one of England's greatest opening batsmen? Probably not. But he was a gifted cricketer. But his ability to read people and get the best out of Gower, Gatting, Botham, Willis at the time was all astonishing.
Characters.
Yeah, all huge characters. Yeah. But being able to mould individuals into a team, and that's a gift in itself. Just trying to find how do I pull together all of these people? But if you've created that culture, I always talk about leaders. Leaders, they create culture. Culture then drives behaviours.
Sure.
Those behaviours deliver the results. So if you've not created the right culture in the first place, you're never going to deliver these results over here, because the culture's not right and the behaviours aren't right. And if that leader, in terms of, it's all about you, what do you do? If you walk past that poor behaviour, or you accept that as, that's good enough, that's the reality.
Yeah.
Whereas you're like Ferguson, that sets the standard here and never allowed it to drop.
Yeah.
And every player in those dressing rooms at Man United at that time, they knew what the standards were. And
Self-regulated it as well.
and they policed it.
Yeah.
But if you didn't create that culture and those behaviours in the first place, those results would never have happened.
Yeah.
And I think all of these things that I take, I always look at the All Blacks as there's huge amounts of books about it. But the All Blacks are the singularly most successful sports team on the planet. And from their early days from 40, they've won something like 85% of every game they've ever played. Now that's astonishing, because things will change in sport. But they have a culture, and it's the pride in the badge. You play for the shirt that the person before you wore, and the person before that they wore. And it's now, well, what are you going to add about? What are you going to do for the shirt? What are you going to add? How are you going to pass the game on in a better condition? But they have some real straightforward, these are cultural beliefs of how you work here. This is how we do things around here. The New Zealand team still, they sweep the sheds. They clean the dressing room at the end of the game. The dressing room is left the same way as it when they arrived. That's a culture. They're the greatest sports players on the planet. They still sweep the sheds. They still continually look at what makes a great All Black. And this is true in most sports and business. Great people make great players. So if they're great, but there are exceptions. I'm sure Maradona was a difficult and challenging character, just a really gifted footballer. So there'll be those exceptions, but usually better people make better athletes. And New Zealand, very straightforward. No dickheads. Don't care if you're the most gifted rugby player in New Zealand. If you're a dickhead, you don't get in. And you are fit in here or you fuck off. That's creating a culture. And you've got to be that's our best player. But if it detracts from the other 14 or the other 10, or that's going to have an impact on your performance as a team. That's team sport. Individuals, that's a whole different ball game in sport. But there's so many analogies in sport of get the culture right. Delivers behaviours. The results take care of themselves.
Something I've always been a little obsessed with is what drives loyalty, and how can you garner that, in your team, in your business, in your club? How do you attract people to play for your team if you don't pay them, which can be an issue with good, the high levels of club cricket, and it's a really fascinating subject.
It is, and I hear it, and I see it. I see it in the game now. I see people moving around for very little money, or in real terms. Well, it's a lot to go. And same in non-league football, and rugby is the same. But if you come down to that ultimate, right, if you create an environment and you invest in those people, and you're going to develop those people, and it's not about you, it's about them, and you develop them. And the same in business. If you develop them so they become so good, that the best salesman or the best cricketer or the best rugby player, you develop them so the whole world wants them. But you treat them so well that they don't want to leave. Now, there's always going to be a number. If I put that number there, you're going to take it at some point. I get that. But you've got to look after people, and that's not always money.
No,
that is not always money. It's the environment, the culture. What else do you wrap around how you treat people? And this is probably in the world today, are we getting into a different? This is because I'm now a really grumpy old nearly 64-year-old. So I sort of go, really? We treat people like that still? We're still. There's almost a permission starting to be granted to people to treat people badly. There's no way on earth should we be treating people badly. We have to be straight and honest. And if you go too far the other way and give everybody what my 5-year-old grandson, all he wants to do is play football and probably eat pizza and watch Bluey on his tablet. But if he was allowed to do that all the time, well, he just play football all the time. But that's not a great thing for him.
No.
But if he knows the parameters and he knows he can play football, he knows he can watch his... But you do all the rest of it, wrapping around and treating it. There's things where you have to say no. And that's the beauty of business strategy, for instance. Everyone talks about what else they're going to do. No one actually does a session on what you're going to stop doing. What are you stopping doing? Because that makes a really effective business strategy.
Okay.
Because people just... I see it in sports strategies. Add this, we'll do that, we're going to do this now, we're going to go for this big shiny thing over here. Well, there's only so many hours in a day, there's only so many days in a week, there's only so many weeks in a year. Something might have to give here. Perhaps AI is going to be a great help there. We can maybe create some more time to really focus on being gifted, being brilliant, and people... I'm certainly not a social media or digital specialist by any means, but I see that as a huge opportunity.
Yeah,
I think it's a great opportunity to develop your business, to help you be more effective.
Yeah.
Creating what are these things that everyone's making a little model of themselves, and they're a doll. They're a doll. I'm a doll, and I've got this in my. They're like sheep. They're like sheep who all follow it. Oh, everyone's got one. I need one.
Yeah.
That's just being a sheep.
Yeah.
Following everybody else. But if you use AI really effectively, I can see that being massive for business, for sport. The sport will massively benefit from it. So we just got to find out what the best use of it is.
Is AI coming into sport?
I think it's starting to. I think it certainly will be in terms of broadcast and delivering really good content to people and developing content. I think that's going to be a huge opportunity. Again, that's not my bag. Not my specialism, but there will be huge opportunities out there to attract new audiences, to talk to new audiences, to talk to audiences about the things they really want to talk about, and identify them as individuals. Not here's the content we've got, whack. Here's James's content, and here's Pete's content, and you know what? They'll be very different.
I was talking to someone yesterday. He's involved. He was on the last episode, and Lee Engelson. He's talking about the Premier League. They have to have so many cameras to be part of whatever it was they're part of, and you can use those cameras to create an immersive experience where it's a 3D. You're involved in a 3D game, and it is live. I was thinking cricket, that'd be great for cricket.
Well, can you imagine? I mean, however we do this, and I'm not quite sure, everybody always says, what's it like to face?
Exactly, yeah.
So if you could create that, I mean, most people want to realise what it's like to face down the barrel of a 90 mile an hour Mitchell Johnson, just Bumrett coming at you, then good luck.
Yeah.
But, you could go to sixes and have a little go in the nets in these bars, and you can tell as soon as you go from beginner and you put the advanced stage, you can see the people, suddenly they think they're really good at hitting fours and sixes. Just turn it up a little bit and they suddenly realise, not in the right environment or the same environment, but that in itself, that immersive understanding of the experience, or just feeling as though you're part of... I mean, I love it now when you use the spider cam. When hopefully Warrington scored a lot more tries this year in the rugby league. But when the camera drops down and you're amongst the players when there's just been a try, and you sort of feel part of the game. You feel like you're in a game. And I think that those sort of things of just being able to talk to your audiences and engage with audiences in a very, very different way is going to be the opportunity. And it's just be different. It's just an evolution of black and white television, colour television, HD.
Yeah.
It's just another development.
Yeah.
It's not bad, and it's not like it's just different.
Yeah.
And it's evolving, and we're all evolving. We should evolve with it, and we should evolve in the business of sport completely.
So what does the future hold for you?
Well, I was looking. When you get to my age, you get these reminders from HMRC that you can actually look at whether your pension contributions are enough to get your state pension. And I now know that on the 14th of July 2028, that's my retirement. That's my retirement age. That's when I can get my state pension and a free bus pass. So I don't really use the bus, but I'm determined to have a free bus pass.
Yeah.
So, but I think what it brings is wanting to still develop people.
Yeah.
That I've been really, really lucky to, as I say, to create opportunities, to influence others, to have this continuous improvement. I'll still do that. Probably do more positions in a non-exec capacity, but also I want to just pass on an ability of things I've learned, different perspectives, and develop people and plant some trees that I'm never going to see.
Sure.
I think is huge, and investing in people, but to make a difference, to invest in people, to become the next generation leader. In my world is sport, but starting to work a little bit in different environments, in education, and in business, just working with teams of people. At the end of the day, you're a team.
Yeah.
Just like a dressing room. It's no different. It's just slightly different outcome, slightly different strategy, perhaps. But I've still got a lot of energy, still want to work, but want to see the development of cricket through this global transformation. It's going to be it's hugely exciting.
Yeah.
So I want to see that through and see the game develop and see, I was hugely privileged to be involved in British American football. Part of that was getting flag football, which is the small-sided version of American football, into the Olympics in LA in 28. Yeah. So part of that first pension check I got and go to LA and watch flag football and cricket. Cricket's going to be in the Olympics. So just love developing sport, love developing people to develop sport, and just want to just take massive investment into people to be the best they can be. And sometimes it's just, as I said before about that coaching session, just how do you get that? You don't put excellence in, you just find a way to get the excellence out.
Great. That could be a really good place to finish. And I think, the reason I got into coaching when I did was thinking about the sessions that we had with you and those things, and
I'm very proud and privileged to have played perhaps a small part in that. And
30 years ago,
30 years,
a horrific amount of time.
It is. It's too long, but we can enjoy a cup of tea and fabulous cakes. I can't leave without getting stuck into those.
Don't need a full 101s, that's what I'm saying. You might not reach your pension. But thanks for coming in.
Absolute
really
pleasure.
Privilege.
Thank you.
And
appreciate it. Thank you.